After a lot of speculation, the Cleveland Browns finally brought in a veteran defensive tackle today for a workout. Former Denver Bronco, former Seattle Seahawks Shelby Harris was in Berea today. The Browns had the workout. The question is, now can they get pen to paper and bring in the much-needed veteran defensive tackle? Your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound LGB on the LLB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, now my 7th season here with you all on Locked On Browns. Seen some good times. Certainly seen a lot of bad times. Hopefully better days are ahead for everybody. Appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. Whether it's here on YouTube, join the everyday crowd. Best way to do that is by subscribing on the YouTube channel. Put those notifications on so when the content drops, you're all there to absorb it. Locked On Browns, always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Now, we've talked about this, and maybe, the trip down to the Greenbrier, the Browns were, obviously doing their due diligence, but we felt maybe once they got back to Berea, maybe, any interest they would have in any remaining free agents would start to pick up a little bit. Today, the off day, have their first visit. Defensive tackle Shelby Harris, 6'2", 290 pounds, was in the buildings in Berea today. Originally drafted by the then Los Angeles Raiders, Shelby Harris started his collegiate career at the University of Wisconsin, grew up in Wisconsin, redshirted his first year in Madison, transferred to Illinois State, ended up being a pretty solid player at Illinois State. Right before the beginning of his senior year, he was dismissed from the team, which certainly hurt his draft stock. Ended up being drafted in the 7th round by the Raiders. Not much really came of his time in his 2 years with the Raiders. 2016, it was kind of floated around, bounced around, didn't really have a home. Got an opportunity in 2017 on a futures contract with the Denver Broncos and proceeded to play 5 seasons with the Denver Broncos and play extremely well. Last season was with the Seattle Seahawks. Reaching out to a few today, they still believe there is some interest from the Seattle Seahawks for Shelby Harris to return. So certainly something to keep your thoughts on here as we see the way this saga works out here. Harris has 3 seasons of 6 sacks, and 5.5 sacks. We haven't seen those numbers from an interior defensive lineman since Larry Ogunjobi here in Cleveland. It kind of lets you know just how bad the interior play has been the last few years here for the Cleveland Browns, and you need to try and really, really get this one done. Exasperated, sure, by Perion Winfrey, and Perion Winfrey, we're not exactly sure what the Browns truly thought his possibilities or his abilities could have been for this team in 2023, as far as the play on the field, the work ethic. We'd heard positive things, but we all know Perion Winfrey was just a guy that cannot find a way to get out of his own way, and brought his current being an NFL free agent certainly on himself. But you've got this type of player here in Harris, who succeeded obviously in a couple of spots here. Veteran. He kind of knows the deal, knows the drill. But there's an opportunity here for this guy to get himself in on a team that has legit aspirations for success here in 2023. So for Harris, this would be a coup. And to get a guy here, and maybe he wouldn't technically start because he is a guy that can contribute as a pass rusher. Like I said earlier, he could be a guy that maybe kind of comes on the field when maybe a Dalvin Tomlinson and a Jordan Elliott come off the field. So this is a big one, though. It really is. I really think they need this player. They need one more veteran defensive tackle, the only defensive tackle in that room with any proven track record within the league is, Dalvin Tomlinson, and the rest of it, whether it's been injuries, whether it's been underachieving, Browns just don't have much else there, and it's really, really difficult to bank out a whole bunch of players to just all of a sudden find something or get the gift of health that they've never had in their NFL career up until this point. Now, you look at this, and obviously I think the key for the Browns is probably going to come down to money. Shelby Harris probably knows what his role would be if he were to go back to Seattle. Certain, kind of comfortable there with one season already with the Seahawks, and I'm sure there's other teams out there looking for a veteran defensive tackle at this point. So this might be one where the Browns probably going to have to, work hard on trying to find financial considerations that maybe Shelby Harris and his camp just can't say no to. So, it could be 1 year, $3.5 million with a lot of incentives, 1 year, $4 million. They've got to really find a way to basically just put Shelby Harris in a position where he can't tell Andrew Berry and the Cleveland Browns, no, they need this guy. And we're not fooling anybody. Everybody knows, in looking at this Browns roster, where the weak spot is. It's a glaring hole at this defensive tackle room after Dalvin Tomlinson. This would do a huge, huge service to the entire defense, sure, but certainly to the defensive tackle room. You get this guy in here, and again, he's a little bit different because he has this proven record as a pass rusher, and he's found different places to succeed in the NFL. Of course, already with two different franchises. He would turn 32 on August 11th, so getting older, but not necessarily old. But this is something that's been in the works as far as trying to get to meet with Shelby Harris. He was actually back in Denver last week. Did a meet and a workout with the Broncos as well. So he's got suitors, and he's got suitors that he's familiar with. So the Browns kind of going to have to tip the scales here a little bit on this one if you want to get this player to agree to come here. So this is going to be a tricky one here. We haven't heard anything more other than the fact that he was in the building today. Haven't heard anything about whether or not he left the building or, what exactly the next step is here for him, or certainly what the next step is here for the Cleveland Browns. But finally, maybe what we all think, and I'm sure nobody in the offices in Berea is fooled either, the Browns still need help at defensive tackle. And so with the workout of Shelby Harris today, we'll see if the pursuit continues. But this is one, hopefully, that Andrew Berry and, of course, Cleveland Browns can get on. This is a much-needed player right now for this defense, and maybe one final piece to the arsenal that the Browns could, get here and get right and get ready for 2023. And, of course, the Cincinnati Bengals, which is, getting closer and closer, about 5 weeks away from opening day. We're going to get to a little bit more here. We're going to talk about the defense here and why, for me, this Shelby Harris move would make sense. We'll get to that here. Your latest Locked On Browns. Thanks, everybody, for being along for the ride with your host, myself, Jeff Lloyd. Thanks again, everybody. eBay Motors. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So with draft prep underway for the upcoming season, let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. If you're looking to park an elite running back in your fantasy football garage after the top half dozen options at the position have been taken off the lot, expect Lions rookie Jahmyr Gibbs to be a roaring engine as he takes the lead role in an overhauled backfield. The real first-round pick is as steal as an RB2, possessing the talent and pedigree to deliver big, immediate results in a loaded offense. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With eBay Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, taillights, alternators, shocks, struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it. And they'll make sure it's the right fit for your car, because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the first time. So go forth, switch gears, crank the AC, and say goodbye to sweating if your ride needs a little fixing up. Because now you know you'll always be set up for success from the get-go with eBay Guaranteed Fit. Everything your vehicle is calling for is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Continuing along here on your latest Locked On Browns with your host, Jeff Lloyd. Again, as always, I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. I suggest you join the everyday crowd. Best way to do that is subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, of course. And, of course, Locked On Browns is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Now, as we talk about, in my opinion, the importance of adding Shelby Harris here, now you have to look at this. Now, Jim Schwartz comes in here, veteran defensive coordinator, obviously a big-time track record, whether it was with Tennessee, whether it was with the Detroit Lions, whether it was with the Buffalo Bills, whether it was with the Philadelphia Eagles. And there's certain positional players that Jim Schwartz needs to make his defense work. And if you look at it, the Browns have really pounced on the needs they had in accordance to those players. Cornerback room, yes, you added another one through the draft, but the Browns have a really, really solid cornerback room. You needed to improve your safety room. So not only did you get Juan Thornhill in the beginning of free agency, after the draft, you went out and you brought in Rodney McLeod and a coup, obviously, because this is a player already familiar with Jim Schwartz, already has played with Jim Schwartz. So you addressed the safety room. You knew you needed help after Myles Garrett. So you go out pre-draft during free agency and you go get Ogbonnaya Okoronkwo. A good get. Everybody was excited about at the time, and you still went to work. You went ahead and drafted another defensive end and rookie Isaiah McGuire. I'm sure we'll see a lot of Isaiah on Thursday night against the Jets. But then you get this coup to drop into your lap after the draft, and Andrew Berry's able to get on the phone with his buddy Kwesi in Minnesota and pound out and find a way to make a deal work for the Cleveland Browns to acquire Zadarius Smith. So now not only did you have Myles Garrett, you also added another two free agents in the defensive end room with, obviously, Zadarius Smith, and, of course, with Obo Okoronkwo as well. So the Browns, boom, right there. 4 veterans, 2 in the safety position, 2 in the defensive end room. We knew the issues that this team has had at defensive tackle over the years. And Dalvin Tomlinson was a big one. Obviously, they were in on every big-name defensive tackle that was available in free agency. You got Dalvin Tomlinson to agree. Couldn't get really anything else done there. You made some minor moves, obviously, for Tristan Hill. Another minor move, Maurice Hurst, a player with a ton of potential, but sadly has had bad luck injury-wise his entire NFL career up until this point. So you did add some veterans, but again, nothing really earth-shattering besides Dalvin Tomlinson. Sione Ika pick in the 3rd round. We'll see how it works out. Obviously, a big mammoth man, physical player. And I think somebody down the road that could be a player, and I'm not sure necessarily he's going to be a player right away, but this 350-pound, just big ball of energy that moves really, really well in a short area. So you're able to get Ika in here. But you went 2 veterans deep at the defensive end position. You went 2 more veterans at the safety position. So why is it that crazy to not believe that the Browns will go another veteran here at defensive tackle? And pardon me if at some point I go through my phone here again just to make sure we haven't heard any more news, just letting you know that now. But obviously the Browns know that there's a hole there still at defensive tackle, and they need to find a way to get just one more veteran guy in this room, a guy that they can count on, a guy that they can give a role to and know he's going to say, yes, sir, and he's going to go out and do the role that he's been asked to do. So for that and what you've seen as far as the moves Andrew Berry has made, it makes sense that they're going to continue to poke at defensive tackle here to try to get somebody else to bite, even though it's a little late in the game. But there are some guys still out there, still available. Matt Ioannidis is obviously a guy we talked about, and he's another one that's still out there and still available for this team to possibly pursue, to possibly bring in to help Dalvin Tomlinson, to help the rest of the defensive line, to help Jim Schwartz's defense. You look at this defense overall, And you think, look at Miles, Za'Darius, Okoronkwo, your top three at the edge position. There's going to be a lot of battling for 4 and 5 afterwards. Defensive tackle room, Jordan Elliott's going to be here. Your thoughts on that? Probably all the same. Everybody, that's great. Can we finally see something out of Jordan Elliott? Sure, we all agree. Dalvin Tomlinson, we're all excited. Probably, most likely on paper, the best defensive tackle the Browns have had in the 7 seasons I've been covering this team. No question about that. Ika, obviously, and I think one of the reasons everybody's kind of at ease with Ika is because we just haven't seen him yet. But we have seen the Tommy Togiais of the world. We have seen the other defensive tackles, and it's just been a position. The Browns have had a really, really difficult time over the years finding the right mix. 2 years ago, it was Malik Jackson and Malik McDowell, and it was okay. It wasn't anything good. And it's crazy to say, but the best defensive tackle in my time in covering the Cleveland Browns is Larry Ogunjobi. And, he hasn't been here for a while now. So it's really, really difficult to, watch that this room has, and I want to say it wasn't a great defensive tackle room then, but it's really, really digressed since then. The Browns really need this room to start paying some dividends for them. They need to shut down the run. They need to get the big guys off the field. They need to get the more athletic players on the field. They've got the recipe for the second part. They have to make sure they can find some way to get the correct recipe to stop the run, because if it's going to be a problem here again, having the great nickel, having the great dime, having all these pass rushers, it's not going to matter if you're not playing the game from the lead, controlling the clock. It's going to be a really, really difficult thing, and it might not matter exactly what Deshaun Watson and the rest of the offense do here in 2023. So Shelby Harris would be that final piece of the puzzle for me. You brought in 2 veterans at D tackle, 2 veterans at pass rusher, 2 veterans at safety, all huge positions of need. Browns need to get this one done here. This is a guy that can truly make a difference for this team. And, the Browns need to stay on this. And look, it's going to cost a little bit more money than you initially anticipated. I don't think the Browns at this point here, with it being August 1st tomorrow, can wait around any longer. It's not about dollar signs now. It's about giving Shelby Harris what he needs to get him into that Cleveland Browns locker room. I am Jeff Lloyd, your host here at Locked On Browns. We close it out, segment 3. Obviously, this is Hall of Fame week. It's obviously a big week for your Cleveland Browns, first preseason game. Obviously, Saturday, Joe Thomas. I got some words on Joe, some words on maybe what's going on in the field here in the next couple of days. We're going to stick, everybody, please stick around here. Your latest Locked On Browns. Segment 3, as we start to close it out here, your latest Locked On Browns. Obviously, Browns off today, will be back on the fields in Berea tomorrow. I'm sure the place is going to be packed. I've gotten a lot of feedback from a lot of fans already talking about how they're looking forward to this. And, I always get a couple, there's always, these dads and, mom and dads and taking kids out to training camp for the first time. And, the excitement they get from it, as the kids, as they try to pass on this crazy Cleveland Brown fandom to their own children. But it's always a good time. It's always a party. The Browns do it really, really well. They were the best teams in the NFL as far as how their training camp practices go and getting fans in there and trying to be, really, really good to their fan base. And look, for some people, you can't afford necessarily to go to a game. You might not have it like that. So the importance of, the Browns and these training camp practices, which is certainly more wallet friendly, for some of these families that you just can't afford to take 4 kids, they take a family of 4 to go see an NFL football game. So it's best way to get the kids a little taste of something here. And it all begins obviously tomorrow before the Browns trek up to Canton. Before the Browns pack up shop, move out to Canton for a couple days here, get ready for a football game Thursday night against the New York Jets. And obviously, a very, very exciting time comes Saturday as the Hall of Fame commencement will end with Cleveland Browns hero Joe Thomas taking the stage and giving his speech. And just some words on Joe. Now, just make sure we got our ducks right, the season of 2020, I had actually put out a small clip that just did crazy well on Twitter. I mean, like crazy well, like 5,000 retweets, like 40,000 likes. You know, your boy went viral for a hot minute. I think it was even Ian Rappaport who was the one who retweeted it. And after he did that, oh my God, it went off the rails. But later that day, I had gotten a follow. And it was certainly somebody I was always following. And, opened it up and there it was. Joe Thomas followed you. Let me check that again. Is the check mark there? Yeah, Joe Thomas followed you. Mind blown right away. So, of course, right away reached out. Hey, big fan. Appreciate you. Appreciate the follow. And, anytime you want to come on the show, because, hey, you get that follow, man, you got to shoot your shot, right, guys? Joe got back to me shortly after. Hey, you do a great job with the show. Appreciate your coverage of the team. And as I'm reading, it was like, blown away. Like, this is, and we all knew, everybody knew Joe Thomas, the first ballot Hall of Famer, for God's sakes. But, as the time got on, and obviously, you guys know Joe Thomas has been on the show a couple times. But it just struck me, this guy who was an absolute football legend, going to get his just desserts, so to speak, this weekend by being enshrined in the Canton Pro Football Hall of Fame. He was such a down-to-earth guy, just an absolute salt-of-the-earth gentleman. The kind of guy you'd want to be your next-door neighbor, because even though his name was Joe Thomas, he called him and said, hey, can you come over, bring a ladder, I got to fix something. He's just that type of gentleman. So as great as a player as Joe Thomas was off the field, now for me in the 3+ years, I've gotten to know him as a human being. I've gotten to interact with him. I'm just blown away at just the overall, because you deal with a lot of athletes. And look, a lot of athletes are PIAs. They really, really are. And the few that give you the time of day, they're great. The few that go out of their way for you, blow your mind. And this is where I'm going to just share this one. Last summer, my wife and girls, they actually went out to Cleveland. They wanted to go see the Toy Story house. They wanted to go see the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I had one request while they were out there. Could you please bring me back some Joe Thomas beer? It took them about 3 days, and then they finally were able to locate it. I'm sure they didn't know what they were looking for. My wife doesn't drink. So they finally get home, and there it is. 2 lovely 6-packs of Joe Thomas's Great Lakes Brewery beer. Fantastic. Good beer. Loved it. Only problem is we went through it really, really quick. So we have Joe on the show for the first time. And, I'm mentioning da-da-da-da-da. And I was, I even tell him, like, my kids refer to Joe Thomas as the beer guy. Don't follow football, my girls. So I'm telling her da-da-da. And, as we're wrapping it up, we finish recording, getting ready to close it out. Oh, hey, Jeff, just do me a favor. Send me your address. Send me your address. I'll get you out some more beer. I mean, this is Joe Thomas. I mean, a first ballot Hall of Famer. However many time NFL All-Pro. He is just a solid, good human being. This celebration Saturday, that's going to go on for him and certainly the others that are there. And, Darrelle Reed is a fantastic player as well. But for a guy who's been everything to this franchise, that was never a distraction, even though this team didn't win. There were multiple occasions where Joe could have said, hey, you guys just want to move me because it's getting late in my career and you guys can maybe use the extra assets. The Browns wanted him to stay. So therefore Joe said, okay, I'll stay. This is where I work. This is I've signed these contracts. This is my franchise. I'll stay. And, I always wonder, and this is one I really haven't talked to him much about, was, what was it like? And probably by 2020, he would have gone anyway. We all know that. But what was that like? I mean, knowing at least he still had some friends, some former teammates, getting to experience all of a sudden that this team was winning, was a winner, went to the playoffs, won a playoff game. And knowing Joe, most likely he was just happy for the guys. But for all he went through in his career, as great as he was, always was a company man, always was, Cleveland's own. This is a really, really cool time for a guy who totally deserves it. As again, there are plenty of professional athletes who are just straight up jerks and don't understand or don't grasp what they get. They just think it's bestowed upon them. And that is just not the way Joe Thomas, the human being, carries himself. So I'm going to be excited Saturday night. I really, really am. And it's going to be more from, I know this guy. I know him personally. I talk with him. So to get to see him have this honor bestowed upon him, it's going to be a really, really special time Saturday night. And we're all going to sit through it, and we're all going to go through it together. As, it'll be a big night for the Browns. Obviously, we're hoping for bigger nights down the road. Of course, certainly bigger nights down the road. But this is certainly a big one for you Browns fans. As far as the possible logo change, look, guys, y'all know, I was never a fan of the elf. It just wasn't my thing. It's an elf, for God's sake. That guy who stole the truck and drove on the field should have went out to the 50-yard line and done some donuts. Me personally, would I like it to maybe just be the helmet? That's always my favorite, midfield logo. It's just the helmet. You got to think somehow, some way, it's going to be the new dog logo. It just seems where everything is trending towards. I know some aren't huge fans. Me, I kind of like it. I think it looks pretty good on the apparel, but I have to feel that the question that the Browns will reveal tomorrow is that it will be the dog logo that will be dotting the 50-yard line this season for the Cleveland Browns. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd, and make sure you're following at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. So everybody makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. I appreciate you. Be like the everyday crowd. Subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Locked On Browns is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on the LOB. Let's go Browns.